Good morning. Ohayo gozaimasu. 早上好. Now our interpreters aren't going to know how to translate the last one. Good morning in Chinese. My name is Jennifer Turner, and I direct the China Environment Forum here at the Wilson Center.
ラ
I've
ム
been here
のディレクターでございます。
years, and in my first year of working, I had this great intern, my very first intern, and his name was Eric Sussman. And what's cool is that these great interns, they grow up, become important people, and then they come back. And Eric Sussman, who is a senior policy researcher at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies in Hayama, Japan, he came back and he brought a whole bunch of Japanese city officials. Wow, it's exciting. So today, the China Environment Forum, together with our Indo-Pacific program and our Environmental Change and Security program, and a whole bunch of organizations in Japan who Eric will talk to you about, we're putting on a meeting called Bringing Climate and Health Together in Japan and American Cities. Now, all of you here today and online, you know that cities are on the front lines of climate action, decarbonizing our power grids and transportation systems, vital to lower greenhouse gas emissions and lower pollution and threats to health, the environment, and society. Today, we're going to hear stories from 3 Japanese and 3 American cities on their efforts and ideas on how to go net zero and what that might mean to enhance the quality of life in their cities. This event is part of a project from IGES, that Japanese think tank I told you about at the beginning, and it's funded by the Wellcome Trust. The Wilson Center, we're the implementing what's happening in DC portion of the project. And besides today's presentation yesterday and then later today, the group of Japanese cities folks are visiting with everyone from EPA to the US Green Business Council, because we really feel it's important to have city experts talk to each other, because they don't want to hear from people like me. They want to hear from other people who actually help cities be greener and cleaner. I'd like to ask Eric to come on up to give us a quick intro to his organization. Come on up, Eric. So Eric is a senior policy researcher, as I said, at IGES. And let me get that clicker so he can click his slides. So Eric.
Okay, so thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us today. I'm going to give a brief framing presentation that will hopefully lead into our discussion and dialogue across the different cities. As Jennifer mentioned, this is part of a project called Leveraging Co-Benefits for Healthy Net Zero Transitions in G7 cities. And the main goal of the project is to really help cities that are in G7 countries maximize the health benefits of their climate strategies. When I say that, I mean both actions that will help mitigate climate change as well as help adapt to climate change. And to do this, we're providing cities not only with this very useful study tour, but also some tools and some knowledge that will help make the connections between their climate actions and health. And we're going to be doing this in 3 Japanese cities, so you'll meet colleagues that will be representing Kawasaki, as well as Hachinohe, and my colleague Meihua will also be representing Niigata City. And we'll subsequently we'll be going to visit Austin, Texas, and also Paris, France. Actually, we have a study tour in Paris in October. Now, in terms of some of the knowledge that we'll be providing to cities, this very complicated diagram right here is based upon looking at the literature on climate and health. And my colleague, Jo Shin, who works with me, basically what she did is she took a look at all of the studies that have been conducted on this. And what she realized is that we break down those studies, there's really sort of 4 different areas that can help make these connections. One is different types of climate actions. And this ranges from everything like transportation actions, like promoting e-vehicles, to adaptation actions, like nature-based solutions. There's also a big literature on environmental impacts. So, for instance, when you promote EVs, Sometimes it can reduce greenhouse gases and also reduce air pollution. So there's a whole bunch of set of these environmental impacts. And that can also lead into different types of health impacts. Those health impacts can range from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases to even mental stress, if you will. And then there's different impacted groups. And so this can range from young people, old people, minorities, if you will. And so this literature is out there, but the connections in that literature are very important, of course, from a scientific perspective, but we also want to make sure that cities are also able to make those connections in their plans and actions. And so towards that end, what we've been developing, and we're still in prototype stage right now, but is a tool to help cities, at least initially qualitatively, look at some of the connections between those different categories, your climate actions, your environmental impacts, the different types of health impacts, and then impacted groups. And you can see a prototype of the tool right there. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but just to say that what you can do is pick a different type of action on this side there. So for instance, if I wanted to pick EVs or solar, and then if I click right here, then I can see just qualitatively within my plan whether or not that's having different types of impacts on the environment, different types of impact on health, and different types of impacts on different groups. And what we're going to do is then code for all of the different climate plans in Japan, and also we'll do this for about 30 different US cities. We'll also do this for France as well. So qualitatively, you can see what those connections look like with different sort of color coding. And I do want to say that, we were inspired to develop this tool by some of the things that are happening both in Japan and the US. So for instance, our colleagues from Rockville, Maryland have a very interesting climate change plan where they're acknowledging these connections, and we want to try to make these connections even clearer and also help benchmark, to identify best practices. The other thing that we're going to be doing is to take a look at quantifying some of these impacts. And so our colleagues from Kawasaki City are very, very interested in heat stroke issue. And our colleagues from Hokkaido University are helping to understand what might be the rising incidence of heat strokes under different types of temperature scenarios. And this quantified information might also go into the tool as well. So when you click on something, you can see how many people are suffering from heat strokes if we have a 2-degree, 3-degree, 4-degree temperature increase. And the other side of this is we're also looking at potential for linkages between mitigation, air pollution, and health. And so this is some quantified information from Niigata City that's looking at those connections. And now the last piece that I want to highlight that will also potentially go into the back end of this tool, and we'll be able to illustrate some of these benefits, is the importance of engaging directly with cities in what we call a co-design process. So recently we were in the city of Hachinohe, and we worked very closely with city government officials as well as people from the local Rotary Club to understand how different types of scenarios for renewable energy in Hachinohe would have different types of impacts, once again, on environment and on health. And so we believe it's very, very important to engage directly with city policymakers in shaping research that is useful for them. Now, with that, I think that's a nice segue into the discussion that we're going to have right now, where we can learn more from cities on what are their needs and what they're actually doing and how we can help amplify and enhance those connections between climate change and health in the United States and Japan. Thank you very much.
You. All right, so we're going to have 2 panels today, and on the first one we have 2 cities. The city of, because we're in Washington D.C., we have to start with Washington D.C., and that will be Jen Hatch, who's the Chief Green Building and Climate Branch Chief. Sorry, I told you Chief twice. At the D.C. Department of Energy and Environment. She manages a team working to address climate change and advance green building planning through planning and policy development. And following her talk, we've got not 1, not 2, but 3 people from the big city of Kawasaki. And we're going to start Reiko Takeba, is a senior staff member working on adaptation issues at the Kawasaki Environmental Research Institute. And then Eri Tsuchita, she works at the same institute and is also very much focused on adaptation issues. And we saw from Eric already that heat is a big concern on how they're going to cope. And then Mina Uezawa is the deputy manager of the Road and Park Center at the Kawasaki Ward office. And so besides trying to promote collaboration and utilization of parks and green spaces, the city of Kawasaki is really interested, and she personally is interested in promoting nature-based solutions in the city. So want to remind the audience who's here in person, you have your headsets on because the Kawasaki speakers will be speaking in Japanese. At home, the live webcast is all in English. A Japanese recording of this meeting will go up later. And I think that's all. Oh, and reminding people at home too that if you want to submit questions online, there's a widget underneath your screen. Think of, and people here, you're on the front lines of asking questions today. So be ready. After this panel, these two folks from these two cities will take your questions. So I will ask the Kawasaki speakers to start. And here is your clicker. Oh, sorry, DC. DC, sorry, pass it down, sorry.
I was happy to share.
No, Kawasaki. Do you want to click your own? This is the
I can
clicker.
click mine, yeah.
Yeah. Pass it to DC.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about
Thank
that.
you so much.
Insufficient coffee.
No, yeah, we'll get there.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and for the organizers for inviting
ジェニ
me.
ファー、オーガナイザーの皆さん、どうもありがとうございます。また、ワシントンへようこそ
So,
お
Jennifer
越し
said
く
my
だ
name
さい
is
ま
Jen
した
Hatch. I work for the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment, so Washington, D.C. local government. And my team does climate and green building policy. We're really working towards the city's big goals of being carbon neutral and climate resilient by 2045. And really in doing that, trying to make sure that we're building a city that's vibrant, healthy, where residents can thrive in 2045 and on the way to it. So just a fun note, cherry blossoms aren't in bloom right now. You'll have to come back. But something I thought might be, it's one of our most visible indicators of a changing climate here in the district and might be something we have in common with our Japanese neighbors. We are seeing the cherry blossoms here, which line our tidal basin. They were a gift from the Japanese government more than 100 years ago, and we're seeing them bloom earlier due to warmer conditions. So it's a visible reminder that climate change is here now, something I know we all know. It's maybe our most beautiful sign around the tidal basin. Okay, so moving, actually. We talk about climate change in the district as getting warmer, wetter, and wilder. So hotter temperatures, wetter from more rain and riverine flooding, so flooding from our rivers, and wilder, more intense and frequent storms. And I'm really glad that we're talking about climate and health today. This is really the way that we are trying to approach more of our work. I led the development of our carbon neutrality strategy a few years ago. Unfortunately, we kicked off public outreach right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, which it's no surprise we heard a lot about people's concern about health, both indoors and out, and how we are going to build health for our community going forward. We worked with the World Health Organization a few years ago to try and identify some of the ways that climate is impacting health and will impact health in the district. And there's lots, but I'd like to talk about extreme heat today in the district. The district has a climate adaptation plan, which includes heat. But because we know we've had longer, hotter, more intense heat waves, we needed to do a deeper dive on extreme heat. So we released our Keep Cool DC strategy in 2022. We know that heat impacts both people and environment and our infrastructure. For people, it's both an immediate acute heat stroke, heat stress, but also an underlying stressor to folks as the city stays warm. And we know heat does not impact everybody uniformly. So one of the things we worked to do was first identify how heat looks different in the district. So we did a temperature map, literally air temperature and how that differs across the city. Some neighborhoods are almost 17 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than others. So some people might be having a heat emergency on one day and others are not. We know, though, that temperature is only part of the equation. And we looked at a number of other factors: age, underlying health conditions, income, that make people more vulnerable to the impacts of extreme heat. And we put together this heat sensitivity exposure map. And this is what we're using to really guide where are those places and communities to target our work first. So in our plan, it's structured in two sections. One is cooling down the city. So these are things to actually cool the city. It's a lot about where and how to plant trees, some recommendations for infrastructure, even thinking about shading sidewalks and bike lanes the way people are moving through the city. There's also a whole section on keeping residents safe when it is hot. And for this work, we did a lot of talking to residents. What do you do when it's really hot outside? Where do you go? What resources can you turn to? And there's a lot in here, including utility assistance to help people afford to run their air conditioning. One of the ideas that I like the most, we borrowed from New York City, which is a volunteer program. So when we have extreme heat days, a simple phone call checking on those who are particularly vulnerable, especially elderly people who live at home alone, making sure they have a cool space. Are they feeling well? Are they hydrated? Something as simple as that is a really proven solution in this space, and one that we can do now, hoping to do now, even as we build some infrastructure solutions. And I think that speaks to something we know to be true, which is building a safety net, building community, and a connected community is one of the best things that we can do to support our city bouncing back better and quicker after we have an event, whether it's a heat event or a flood or a storm. So it's one of the things I'm most excited about getting started. We have a lot of work to do here. And I think already this work on where the work is most priority is guiding where we're planting trees, putting in splash parks, and also how we're starting to think about buildings and infrastructure as we work at the intersection of climate mitigation and adaptation. I know it's a shared challenge across our cities, both extreme heat and keeping residents safe, so I'm really excited to learn from my colleagues. I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you so much. And as you know, I have to say, in Chinese, there's an expression, "qing ting dian shui," which means the dragonfly skims the water. So we're only going to be doing that for all of these cities, knowing that they have a lot more knowledge and information. So, which is why it's really important to look at the future reports from IGES on all the work the cities are doing. So, all right, Kawasaki, the floor is yours.
本日はこのような発表の
Thank
機
you
会をい
very
ただきま
much,
してありがとうございます。
everybody, to be given this opportunity to present. Today, I'd like to present the adaptation initiative and challenges in Kawasaki City's climate change policies, focusing on research studies on greenery.
というタイトルで発表したいと思います。私は川崎市環境総合研究所の武部と
My
申し
name
ま
is
す。
Takebe from Kawasaki Environmental Research Institute, and we are going to have Tsujita and Uezawa from the Road and Park Center will present this presentation. Let me introduce Kawasaki. Kawasaki is located at the center of Japan, adjacent to the capital city, Tokyo. The area is long and narrow, east to west, and we will celebrate the 100th anniversary. The population is 1.55 million, and we are the sixth largest city in Japan. And the Kawasaki has a natural environment in the hilly area, and the commercial facility are located in the central area. The waterfront is the where industrial zones are located to support Japanese economy. In the past, as the economy grew, the number of factories increased, which led to the environmental degradation, resulting in air and water pollution. The citizens, business, and government together worked together to improve the environment, and now we are enjoying the clean and clear water, clean air too. Our research institute is working on the research and the investigation of the environmental issue. We have also hosted a number of visits from Asian countries with the goal of learning from our experience for their environmental improvement. And next is a Kawasaki vision. We are the GHG emissions are 15% lower in fiscal year 2020 than FY13. Our goal is to have a zero emission in 2050 with a target of 50% reduction of 2030. Due to the concentration of many factories in waterfront area, Kawasaki CO2 emission in the industrial area is higher, 76% compared to the average of 46%.
This is a very important factor in our efforts to prevent global warming. Kawasaki City is promoting the activation of the green finance market, especially for industrial activities with high carbon dioxide emissions and the utilization of hydrogen and other resources in the waterfront area. And this is in order to achieve carbon zero by 2050. The lower left-hand side shows some of the major initiatives in recent years related to mitigation measures to achieve a decarbonized society. One of the most unique features of the project is the establishment of a regional energy company that converts the heat generated by waste disposal into electricity and supplies it to the region. Next, I would describe the main developments regarding climate change adaptation measures in Japan. In 2024, the Climate Change Adaptation Law was revised to address the recent rise in temperatures, which has led to an increase in heat-related illnesses, especially heat stroke. Traditionally, a heat stroke alert is issued when the WBGT reaches 33 degrees Celsius or higher. Starting this year, a heat stroke special alert will be issued when the heat index reaches 35 degrees Celsius or higher, in anticipation of even hotter weather. And also, the designation of cooling shelters will be open when WBGT exceeds 35 degrees Celsius. In July, Kawasaki City also began offering public facilities to its citizens as temporary places to cool off during the summer months. And next, I would like to introduce some of the major efforts that have been made in recent years to adapt to climate change. The Institute had been testing the heat shielding effects of parasols and hats using a thermal imaging camera, and based on the experimental data, we have been giving lectures directly to the public on the use of parasols and hats, as well as distributing leaflets with LCD thermometers. Tsujita will explain the details. Now, let me talk about the details. Now, first, regarding the measures to prevent heat stroke, you see, Japan is currently experiencing an aging population, and Kawasaki City has the longest average life expectancy of any municipality in Japan. The number of emergency medical care providers is increasing every year, and emergency medical services are under pressure. A breakdown by age of emergency medical evacuees due to heat stroke shows that the elderly account for half of all of them. Therefore, there is an urgent need for heat stroke countermeasures with an emphasis on the elderly people. So one of the actual efforts is to raise awareness, and this is done in cooperation with community targeting the elderly. You see, the elderly are less likely to feel the heat and tend to think of heat stroke as someone else's problem. The key is to get people around you to speak up and see it as their own problem. Next, I would like to talk about the heat control. Kawasaki City is adjacent to two major cities, Tokyo and Yokohama, and is geographically vulnerable to the effects of high temperatures caused by the heat island effect. Green areas are distributed in the northern part of Kawasaki City, while the waterfront area in the south is an industrial area. The number of sweltering nights is lower in the northern part of the northern part than in the southern part, and green areas are considered to be effective in reducing heat. In fact, we are conducting a joint study with Professor Sekine of Tokai University on the heat mitigation effect of roadside shade trees. After walking in the sun and in the shade of street trees for about 20 minutes, we examined changes in physical condition using an index called skin gas. Skin gas is a trace amount of gas produced by human skin and is thought to vary depending on the physical condition of the person. Walking under the shade of street trees resulted in lower surface temperatures throughout the body compared to walking in the sun. Additionally, the amount of ammonia, which is a marker of fatigue stress among the skin gases, was suppressed, confirming the reduction of heat stress. Our institute also disseminates information on the results of such surveys in order to increase citizens' interest in greenery. From here, I would like to discuss the current status of Kawasaki City's green government and its efforts. My name is Uesawa from the Road and Park Center, Kawasaki Ward, Kawasaki City. I hope you understand that the issues I'm about to discuss are based on my objective viewpoint throughout the course of my duties. One of the first issues for green government projects is the maintenance and management of greenery. There are two major green resources managed by the government. One is Park Green Space, which manages an area of 790 hectares. The other is street trees, with more than 40,000 trees. Kawasaki City, which is adjacent to Tokyo, has a very high demand for land and has lost a significant amount of its greenery over the last 80 years. Believing that it is important to preserve and create the remaining greenery, our city has long been working to expand parks and green spaces. Here's a graph on the left side showing the transition of the area of park green space. In the past, we have increased park green space and street trees, but over the past decade or so, we have entered an era of management. One of the current challenges that we're faced with is the fact that there is a large number of trees in aging facilities. This has led to higher maintenance costs and hazards, as well as more complaints from residents. In light of this background, the city has established a basic plan for greenery plan that outlines measures related to greenery and is working on projects, current maintenance and performed by staff and contractors. In recent years, as shown in the diagram and photo below, the company has also taken steps to encourage the development and high-quality management and operation of parks through the introduction of private sector. The next, or the second issue is the collaborative efforts with citizens. In our city, collaborative efforts with diverse entities are being developed throughout the city. In Kawasaki City, more than 70% of all parks are managed by citizen volunteers. However, the aging of the volunteer workforce is putting the sustainability of the program in jeopardy. Therefore, in order to pass on the collaborative efforts to the next generation and further develop them, we will continue to support their activities, ensuring the sustainability of collaborative efforts. This is an urgent issue for us. In order to resolve these issues, through various events and public awareness programs, we are striving to raise the greening awareness of each and every citizen. In cooperation with universities, we work with them who are engaged in research on the conservation and nurturing of the natural environment and biodiversity. In addition to researching the maintenance and restoration of diverse natural environments and preserved green spaces, we're also engaged in environmental education. Awards are also given to establishments that have made outstanding achievements in greening efforts. We are working to improve corporate greening awareness and the environment, as well as landscaping. Collaboration with various entities to manage greening in parks, search for leaders to create new mechanisms. These are the ways we would like to promote to sustainable collaborative efforts in parks and other areas. Lastly, this year, Kawasaki City celebrates the 100th anniversary of its municipal government. As a commemorative event, the National Urban Greenery Kawasaki Fair will be held. 3 major parks in Kawasaki will serve as core venues. We look forward to seeing you all at the Kawasaki Fair to be held this fall and next spring.
We would like to know what you think of our future task and the information you would like to collect. We would like to know from you about the standards for installation of cooling shelters, public awareness for behavior change among citizens, and the citizens' cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And let the audience know sometimes you have to switch your number. Okay, you've picked that up. You're smart people. All right, so want to take some questions. Maybe does anyone have a question that they want to ask right now, or shall I go ahead? Any burning questions? There's a question here. As the mic is getting to you, I want to ask Jen, I want to ask you a question because the Kawasaki team talked a lot about, well, the trees. And I know, I live in Maryland, but I'm very proud of everything that happens in DC. And there seems to be a lot more trees that I've seen in my 25 years in this town. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing?
I can try. Yes, so we have overall a goal of increasing our tree canopy, so tree planting, to 40%. We're around 36, 37. And I think one of the things that we've been really doing is working to maximize the trees along the streets. That's the part we own. And then now trying to move into partnerships with private landowners, so universities, even like we have programs for residents at your house to get a tree. So it's a really important part of the city, and I think it's for heating. For us, it's a lot about stormwater management for us because we have really heavy and intense rains, and it's something we're really proud of. And I will say that I think we share a challenge with Kawasaki in the maintenance of increased green infrastructure is a really important challenge to crack because we know we need more of it, and the maintenance work continues to grow. But we've just been able to secure kind of more regular, sustained funding to do that as a city, so that we can maintain the canopy that we do have. And we're trying to think about how can we use it as a job training program also.
Could be volunteer activities or students.
I know, I was taking note of the, we are not to the, majority of park maintenance with volunteers, but I think there's definitely something we can learn there about how to engage residents more directly in the spaces that people know and love around their house. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, we have a question here, and because there'll be interpretation, try not to speak too fast. Here comes the microphone. And
I was wondering how data and technology comes into this. About 6 weeks ago, the World Bank, AJ Banga, who has been there for about a year, but has changed the mission of the World Bank from just ending poverty to ending poverty and livable planet. And he brought a lot of people explaining that if artificial intelligence is to be any good at all, it should be very good at mapping things like this, so that you could sort of maybe see if your city is a digital twin of each other, depending where the flows are and things like that. So there's an awful lot of new work going on trying to map which cities correspond, where the problems are. And I was wondering if any of the cities today are going to talk about the data and technology side.
okay, so
I would defer to my colleagues.
someone from Kawasaki want to talk about that? Are you using high tech to kind of help you in your adaptation planning, or who wants to answer?
適応策の方ですね。
Let me say, maybe the adaptation plan. It might not be high technology, but the technology was introduced already. The adaptation plan, we try to think about the awareness increase of the citizens or the change of the way of thinking. On the left bottom, we would like to have the information visible and easy to understand. So the thermography, for example, is easy to understand, and you can see this issue as your own problem. So it might not be high tech, and maybe we are going to utilize the advanced technology in the future.
Sometimes low tech is the solution, but Jen, anything in DC in terms of thinking of high tech from data?
I think we endeavor to get more in that space. We're not there yet. I think one of the spaces, sorry,
Yeah, I know. I know.
one of the spaces I think that could be an easy first entry point is we're trying to do more in our air quality monitoring and testing out different kinds of air quality, outdoor air quality sensors. And one interest my team has is how could we think about more readily available, easier to deploy small technology that would help us get more real-time monitoring of both air quality and temperature, because ongoing temperature data is not something we have access to, and we're hoping that maybe some of these solutions will make it easier for us to collect more regularly and enable us to be a little more nimble than we are now.
I mean, I know that on different issues, but a lot of crowdsourcing opportunities. Our Science, Technology, and Innovation program has done some research on different ways that citizens. I'm thinking more of one project I know about is invasive animals, where hikers, I know, but people around the city kind of help track and map them. But I think that's just something too. I was wondering that, again, the volunteer component, but I suppose cities, you need staff to manage and train kind of them. Now I have a question to ask Jen. Do you have a question for Kawasaki?
Oh, so many.
put you on the spot. So.
Yeah, thanks. So many. I guess one thing we struggle with is as we are getting longer, hotter summers, the alerts that we send to people about it being hot start to feel constant, and maybe like people don't pay as much attention because you get one every day. Curious if you are having a similar challenge and how you think about communicating with people in a way that really helps them focus on when heat is really dangerous, and how you're communicating or communicating differently.
Who wants to answer that?
どうでしょうか？
はい、川崎市でも
Yes, in the city of Kawasaki, there were a lot of extreme heat days, and we wanted to tell the citizens, and on TV, we issued the alert that today is very hot, so be careful. So they get used to the alert, and we are thinking it is a dangerous situation. So Twitter or X is utilized to issue alert. Today is hot. Be careful. However, the elderly people do not communicate on SNS X. So we would like to find a better way to communicate with the elderly citizens.
Okay, is there a question from the audience? Eric, you seem strangely quiet. We need a microphone for you, though. Just a brief question, and then we'll have to switch our panels.
Yeah, so this is a question for Jen, but it has implications, I think, for Kawasaki. When you were developing, for instance, your adaptation plans or your net zero plans, can you speak a little bit about how you brought in stakeholders from different groups, different parts of DC, or especially young people that might not necessarily have a voice? How do you engage with different stakeholders to make sure the plan is theirs?
Yeah, I love that question because we are actively updating our climate adaptation plan right now. So we are in the middle of that engagement. And I will say that the first time we did not nail it. And so we have a new opportunity to do better and learn more. I think what we are trying to do is make sure that there are opportunities like a survey, an open house that are open to everybody, but being much more focused on doing deep engagement in those high heat or priority neighborhoods, those communities who are most vulnerable to climate change, and really being much more intentional about bringing groups of people together who are more impacted. So we are just doing a series of focus groups with older residents, with residents who live in particularly flood and heat-prone neighborhoods. Youth is a big one for us, and I think that's something we really need to do a lot more with, and I'm excited about. But I think we've been trying to, in this space, trying to talk about not only what the risks are that we face, which are real, but also what could it look like if we get it right. And I think that is a really important framing because it can be really challenging to just be thinking about all the ways that this is hard and some, to a certain extent, locked in. And so talking about how could neighborhoods look, how could it look for you to go to school or go to work or live in this space, if we're able to do these solutions. I think that's been a really helpful, especially for youth and younger folks, to envision what's the kind of city that you want to live in and how can we get there. So more work to do, open to ideas.
Thank you for that. Want to give a shout out to people online that, I'm sorry, we had a problem with the English not going out. Our interpretation team is making sure that they switch. They have to press a button, so that it got missed. Apologies. All right, I have a quick question, and I want a quick answer from two cities. Kawasaki, you're smashed up close to Tokyo. DC, you got Virginia and Maryland. I'm wondering, are you working with your neighboring cities or states? And if you're not, where would you like to work with them? Because climate change knows no city boundaries. I'll start with Kawasaki. Like, is there an area where you are or would like to be working with Tokyo? You can't move them further away.
Okay.
気候変動って言ったら
Yeah, so in terms of climate change, there is a mitigation and adaptation measures that one can take. So at in terms of mitigation for us, we are utilizing hydrogen. So we are cooperating in this area with Tokyo. So we supply hydrogen and use energy together. This is, in short, what we are doing together with Tokyo. And the other thing that I can talk about is in terms of adaptation measures, there is some level of implementation planning that is being put together, but we are not making a big progress. So we are hoping to have something called A-Plat, which is a information sharing platform, and in order to have collaborative efforts. So this is something that is still ongoing. So again, in terms of adaptation, it's not so much of what we are doing just with Tokyo, but we are doing collaborative effort with Japan as a whole.
Great. How about DC? Does Maryland, do we play with you?
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing me together with our neighbors too,
Yes.
who are on the next panel. Yes, absolutely. And I think one place, magic wand, transportation for us is huge. We all need it. We all need it to work better. I envy many of the Japanese systems. And we know that, especially at the district, we can't get to our climate goals without a regional transportation solution. And so that's, I think, that's my biggest wish. So we are working together and we need to do a lot more.
Okay, sounds good. All right, want to ask you guys to applaud our speakers here, and we're going to be switching out. Eric, come on up. So Eric, come on up. While we're switching panelists, I wanted to pump Eric for some information. You're doing this project on looking at climate plans and health. What do you see as, first, what are some of the biggest challenges you have or that the cities are having in Japan on bringing them together? And what's maybe one success story you've seen in any of the cities?
Right. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges that we find is that, especially as a researcher, we sort of think that what we can demonstrate in a model or, using some type of tool will necessarily translate to what the policymaker will do and the action on the ground. But I think what we found, even in the early stages of this project, is the way that policymakers or decision makers at different levels use that information. It varies a lot, and the context matters a great deal. So as you can see, I mean, we'll see from colleagues from the different cities, from Hachinohe, from Niigata, from Kawasaki. When you generate something in a model, then you need to go through a process of really trying to translate that to something that's useful and meaningful to the decision makers in that city. So there's a back and forth process between what you can do, your research, how the policymakers and decision makers work with it, and then back out to the researchers. So strengthening that interface between the researcher and the policymaker, and then also action on the ground is really important. And that's a big challenge, but it also opens up a lot of opportunities. And so I think one of the things I've learned already from our study tour here is, for instance, our colleagues from Kawasaki are putting a lot of emphasis on heat stroke and nature-based solutions. I think Japan has a lot to share and transfer some of those lessons, not only to the United States, but also, to other countries as well. So Kawasaki works a lot with Southeast Asia. I think there's a lot of openings and opportunities to make this transfer of knowledge, not only between US and Japan, but globally. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Jennifer? Very well. Okay, so welcome back. Hoping that we got the English online again. So, and Eric, thanks for those questions or answer. Want to now introduce my other speakers, and I just realized I don't, well, where'd it go? All right, so on this next panel, we've got the city of Rockville, Baltimore, Niigata, and I never say it right, Hachinohe. Hachinohe. I'm going to have the speakers, just to make things go a little faster, that when you speak, give a good intro, quick intro to yourself. So I think we're going to start with Baltimore.
Oh, wonderful. Well,
Yay.
good morning, everyone. Konnichiwa, if I can. Thank you so much for having us here to speak to you all this morning. My name is Ava Richardson. I'm the Sustainability Director for Baltimore City. And I think we are getting the slides up pretty soon.
The clicker's right here.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry, just
thank
click
you.
forward.
No, that's okay.
Just keep going.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. In Baltimore City, Maryland, we are a predominantly African-American city. Roughly 63% of our residents are Black. And in Baltimore City, we have a history of some environmental injustices and practices of divestment that have happened. So a lot of our climate work in the city really focuses on atoning for those past injustices and really ensuring that our most vulnerable populations are receiving the climate investments that have been deprived of those communities for decades. I do want to give a very warm welcome to one of our sister cities, Kawasaki. Under a previous mayor in 1979, Baltimore established a relationship with, I believe, 8 sister cities, and Kawasaki is one of them. And many of those exchanges have focused on cultural exchanges. And the more that we can, I learned a new term from the Jennifers today, engage in climate diplomacy and learn from one another's climate efforts, especially around heat mitigation. I think the better we all are off. In Baltimore City, our Office of Sustainability started in 2007. And so we really focus and support programs, policies, and actions that really advance government, citizens, and businesses to lead or actions that lead to sustainable communities. This is just kind of like some background on our office itself. We sit within the city's Department of Planning. And this is important because it's a big question of climate governance in terms of how the work is organized, where that work sits, and that kind of frames how you're going to be able to be nimble and approach that work. I know in DC, you all have they have a Department of Environment and Energy. So just giving the context, we sit in a planning department. So a lot of the work that we do focuses on developing plans and implementing them. This is just a high-level overview of our office and the work that we do in the office, which includes 3 primary buckets: climate and community resilience. That includes implementing our 2019 sustainability plan, which I'll talk a little bit more about, which is really anchored to equity and environmental justice goals. Our climate action plan, which is our roadmap to carbon neutrality by 2045, and our disaster preparedness plan, which is a FEMA regulated plan that focuses on how we enhance our resilience across the city. We also have a community resiliency hub program under this particular body of work. And these sites are existing community-based organizations that serve as points of access during and after disaster events. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, they have served as food distribution sites and vaccine sites. They also serve as cooling centers during extreme code red extreme heat days. And we are trying to figure out other ways we can activate our community resiliency hubs when there's like a flooding event or a massive power outage. How can we activate and make sure that these centers have resources to provide to community members? We do a greenhouse gas inventory to track our progress on our greenhouse gas reduction goals on a triannual basis. And then we also integrate and connect across different other program priority areas. We manage regulatory compliance within the city as it relates to environmental protection and regulation, and that includes forest conservation, critical area, which is the 1,000-foot buffer of the Chesapeake Bay and its tidal tributaries, as well as our floodplain management. So we manage the city's floodplain, which is that is the nationally supported flood insurance, and you can buy private flood insurance in the U.S., but our Federal Emergency Management Administration provides a nationally supported flood insurance program. And so we also are able to give our policyholders a discount on their flood insurance through our participation in what FEMA calls the the community rating system. So we also do environmental grants with offset funds to support mitigation. And then we have a whole nother body of work that focuses on kind of like policy and program, policy implementation and program management. And that includes everything from a commission on sustainability that engages publicly and educates our residents about where we are in our climate work, our work to connect children to nature. We provide green schools grants. And then we oftentimes kind of pilot and then institutionalize new areas of work across the city. Our work is intersecting and cross-cutting, so we work across a lot of different types of plans in the city. In our 2019 sustainability plan, we have 5 sections, 23 chapters, and 244 actions. Right now, we are tracking the progress of those actions on a 5-point scale that ranges from not started to completed and ongoing. And we've roughly reached a point where 57% or 139 of those actions have reached a certain stage. So, and I'm being told to slow down my cadence.
Just a little bit.
Sorry. I'm trying to get a lot in. So, but yeah, I apologize. We also, again, anchored this plan to our environmental justice and equity goals across the city. So we really developed it with an equity lens when it comes to like how we are defining a planet, a project and its purpose in that perspective, the types of data that we want, and also how we're interpreting and analyzing that data, because sometimes you can lie with statistics or there can be misinterpretations of data. Also, how we support inclusive community engagement and thinking about equity as an action verb. So thinking about how we are fostering capacity building and accessibility and addressing disproportionate impacts. So making sure that the programs that we're implementing, whether or not that's a program related to extreme heat or flood mitigation, that it really is centering those vulnerable communities who are primarily the intended benefactors of that work. This is just a snapshot from our annual sustainability report where we provide that update on where we are, and this is our 2023 annual report. I'll share a link out in case anyone is interested. Again, our climate action plan kind of providing that roadmap to achieving carbon neutrality by 2045 in alignment with DC's goal, and I imagine as well as the state of Maryland and other jurisdictions in the state. We start this plan with guiding principles, which in many ways builds on our equity implementation guidelines, really centering equity and thinking about how we want to implement this plan to anchor and amplify, to anchor those goals to, having these like poly solutions, but also amplify the investments and leverage the investments in the best way possible. So we tried to implement with this framework in mind. Our climate action plan, our intention was to achieve 6,000 unique engagements in the engagement process. So we did surveys, we did public events, we also did virtual workshops. and had a public comment period for the initial draft of our climate action plan, where we received hundreds of comments. And so that led to us kind of updating things to distill down into these 5 sections, including buildings, electricity, transportation, waste, and nature-based solutions. Our disaster preparedness plan, this is again a plan that is regulated by the Federal Emergency Management Administration, or FEMA, our disaster preparedness agency at the national level. We can think of our climate adaptation, our climate action plan and our disaster preparedness plan as respectively our climate mitigation and adaptation plans for the city. So this particular plan provides the latest data analysis and research on all the risk that a particular region faces. And so it's broken down into 9 particular topic areas, including temperature extremes, flooding, sea level rise, et cetera. For communities in the United States that participate in this process, we do have access to hazard mitigation funding from the federal government. And so we've been able to access, or other organizations have been able to access millions of dollars in funding by having an updated plan. And this is just a map of our Community Resiliency Hubs program. We did receive a $7.3 million grant from FEMA to support the installation of solar arrays and battery backup at 16 Community Resiliency Hub sites across the city. Some of our other work focuses on climate and youth. So we have a Connecting Children to Nature body of work, where we're really trying to lean into the beneficial aspects of children spending time in nature. We also have a Nature Nurture Symposium, where we're also kind of like leaning into that theme, and a Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, as well as Green Schools grants that we provide. We do a monthly Commission on Sustainability meeting that's publicly facing, and monthly newsletters to educate the general public. And from a climate governance perspective, we also have a sustainability and resiliency subcabinet that enhance or fosters cross-agency collaboration to ideate around these 6 topics, including extreme heat mitigation, waste, and sustainable transportation. And I'll pass it to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. So Akiri Maeda from Hachinoma is in the Environmental Management Bureau, and I'd like to invite you to give your presentation, if you could grab that, and thank you so much. And I love
皆さんこんにちは。八戸市の前田です。それでは八戸市の取り組みについて、ご説明します。まず、当市ですけども、日本の本州の最北端にある青森県の南東部、北緯40度30分に位置し、太平洋に面した22万人の都市です。移動的にはニューヨークに近いと思います。基本的には冷涼な気候ですけれども、夏の気温は30度を超える日も数日あり、近年の夏の暑さは昔に比べると厳しくなっております。また北国でありながら、冬の降雪量が少なく、年間を通じて日照時間が長いことも特徴となっています。伝統文化であるお祭りについてご紹介します。毎年8月にユネスコの無形文化遺産山鉾屋台行事の一つである八戸三社大祭が行われ、多くの市民、観光客が集まります。自然について紹介します。左側の写真ですけれども、太平洋に面する当市が誇る自然景観、国立公園種差海岸です。ここから南側に伸びる約 1000km の長距離自然遊歩道、道のく潮風トレイルの起点となっており、近年はトレイルを歩く欧米人の方々も多くいらっしゃいます。さて、左のグラフは当市の平均気温の100年間のトレンド、右のグラフは近年の CO2 の排出量を表しております。年間を通して比較的涼しい気候の八戸ですけれども、平均気温は 1.9 度上昇しています。
The temperatures have increased by 1.9 over 100 years. On the other hand, the CO2 emissions have been decreasing in recent years due to the spread of renewable energy and the promotion of energy conservation in a declining population. And in terms of the industry, the city is one of the leading fishery cities in Japan, with a large fishing port, industrial port, and commercial port located on the waterfront. It is a leading industrial city in the northern eastern part of Japan, has an international port. And therefore, when looking at the breakdown of greenhouse gas emissions, Hachinohe is upper row as a higher percentage of emissions from the industrial sector and industrial process sector than Aomori Prefecture, and in the middle row and the rest of Japan in the lower row. It is characterized by the fact that they account for 64% of city's total emissions. In order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Hachinohe, we believe that it is essential to take action at the port where many industries are concentrated. The national and prefectural governments have policies and plans to decarbonize ports and harbors, and the city of Hachinohe is also discussing this at the Hachinohe Port Zero Emission Conference, which is attended by the companies in the port area. The diagram in the reference material is only a concept at this point, but we will continue to study more concrete measures in the future. And the city has set the formation of decarbonized and circular society as one of the basic goals of its basic environmental plan, which is designed to promote a comprehensive systematic environmental policy. In addition, the city's action plan for global warming countermeasures sets the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions with a view to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 within the city's area in fiscal 2030 to approximately 2.22 million tons, a 50% reduction from fiscal 2013 levels. In order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the city has organized its efforts into 4 measures. Hachinohe City, with its long hours of sunlight, is said to have high potential for the introduction of renewable energies, including solar power. By promoting the introduction of renewable energy in cooperation with related entities, Hachinohe City aims to achieve local production and local consumption of energy, revitalize the economic cycle within the region, and create disaster-resistant region. Regarding Measure 2, promotion of reduction activities by business and residents, from the perspective of responding to soaring energy prices, we will promote through energy-saving behavior through the spread of energy efficiency assessments and the introduction of high-efficiency equipment. In addition, through the promotion of public awareness activities, we will deepen the understanding of citizens and businesses regarding global warming countermeasures and promote lifestyle changes. Measure 3, development and improvement of local environment. This promotes urban development with a small environment burden in response to local issues, not only to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also to address the expected decline in population and aging society in the future. The specific initiatives include promoting use of public transportation, encouraging the reduction of redelivery of parcel deliveries, and urban greening. And then Measure 4, which is the formation of recycled-oriented society. If the amount of waste is incinerated is reduced, greenhouse gases will be reduced. We will curb the generation of waste, promote proper resource recycling. And lastly, in relation to health, the high temperatures of recent years may have a short-term and direct impact on health due to heat stroke. The fiscal year until the end of July, heat stroke alerts were issued 668 times nationwide, and 47,213 people were transported to emergency medical services. In Aomori Prefecture, including Hachinohe City, no heat stroke alerts have been issued, but 279 people have been transported to emergency rooms due to heat stroke. And now these countermeasures for heat strokes, we have been publicizing and informing the public, but we have also added this aspect to really provide the residents with places to cool off. And this initiative, which is spreading nationwide, not just cooling shelter, but also cool sharing, is also leading the energy saving. In our city, 36 public facilities and various areas have started this project. And in addition, we aim to become a compact city. And even in the phase of declining population, the city maintains public transportation bus routes connecting various parts of the city to the center of the city. And at the same time, the city is characterized by the concentration and development of open public facilities at the center, so they can be used by everybody. The elderly who do not have their own cars, students, parents, and children, anybody can all easily use these facilities to escape the heat of the city. Conclusion, we recognize that global warming is a pressing issue that cannot be avoided, but it is not limited to the environment. It is also intricately related to the social economic sectors. So it is necessary for us, citizens, businesses, to view this as their own issue and actively take measures. And we will promote efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change while taking into account the knowledge gained from this study tour and advanced initiatives. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
If I forget later, I might want to have maybe Ava have you, because he's a port and you're a port, wondering about greening the port. All right, let's go to Rockville, my neighbor, literally. Okay, Ava, get the clicker passed down here, please. And let's hear your stories about your climate action in my neighborhood. I live in Kensington, Maryland. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And it's just such a privilege to be here among my distinguished colleagues in the local DC area, as well as from the beautiful country of Japan, which someday I hope I will get to go visit.
There's an invitation to go to the Kawasaki
oh, that's
Green
right, the
Festival.
Green
Next year.
Festival. Absolutely. So I actually, funny story, I grew up in a different suburb of Washington, D.C., and I grew up in the summers exploring the streams and actually the storm drain infrastructure, the pipes that were flowing to the streams in my neighborhood. Little did my parents know. And here I am talking about flooding and the environment. So everything makes sense. So I originally studied ecology, and then I became a natural science educator, and later I studied urban planning, and that's when I started to work on climate policy, and that was about 15 years ago, and I've been with Rockville about 5 years now. So, oh, let me get my slide.
Yeah.
Here. Okay, this slide shows up a little different than.
Sorry.
It's just the formatting, but most of it's there, I think. So we found that one of the most effective messages on climate change has focused on the need to protect human health, whether we're talking about carbon pollution reduction or trying to try to stop the worst of the climate disasters in the future, or helping our communities manage the heat waves and the cloud bursts that we are experiencing now. So climate change affects as we know, affects our bodies, our mental health, and the infrastructure we depend on. So this is the slide that we used, it looked a little better, when we were explaining the proposed climate action plan to our elected officials, which emphasizes human health. It wasn't, so it took me time to start my career in climate change, and Rockville similarly took time to develop our climate action plan. And we had a number of champions in the community and in staff and mayor and council, and passed a number of declarations and resolutions over the years. This is starting in 2006, but it took until about 2019 before we got funding to develop a climate action plan. But when we were ready to act on climate change, we were able to act fast. And some of that is due to the nature of Rockville. So we are just to the north west of Washington, D.C. I don't know if you can see the red outline there in the lower picture. And we're a medium-sized city, probably a tiny city if you compared to Japanese cities of 70,000. But we do
な
have
ことかなと思いますけど、7万人
balanced development. We have 2 metro rail stations and other commuter rail stations and transit. And we have very good transit-oriented development and a balance of multifamily residential and commercial development. We also have a lot of local control. We have a local mayor and council and a housing authority that provides affordable housing for several hundred units. We also manage our own stormwater system and have control over our own building codes and land use and our park system, and we have an extensive public engagement system as well. And I'm the sustainability coordinator. I'm actually in the Department of Public Works as well. And we provide, we do our own drainage and roads and a lot of our infrastructure. So this was allowed us to really act locally quickly once we got to that point. So then suddenly, when we were working on developing our climate action plan, Hurricane Ida struck, and the remnants of this hurricane came through our community and brought 2.5 inches, I guess that's about 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters of rain in 30 minutes into a small one side of the community, which was a 327-year storm. And the stormwater infrastructure was just not prepared to handle this. And it caused extensive damage, especially in 2 apartment buildings. The lower level of this one apartment building basically became part of the stream, a new stream going through from one end of the hallway to the other. Yeah, it's just terrible. And the water came up to 3 or 4 feet, or about more than a meter in this building, and ruined many people's, most of what they owned. And then even worse, in one apartment building just outside the city, there was one fatality due to flooding. The waters became so high in one apartment building. So this immediately we saw the need to act on flood mitigation quickly. And so we were able to move into action. And we started with, developing more education and outreach and a web page. We had, and we did a survey to try to understand, first of all, where people were experiencing impacts in their homes. This is wet basements. This is, sometimes, it may just be, moisture coming in, but that, it does affect health, because you're talking about, mold over time that can really exacerbate any existing health conditions, asthma or, other illnesses dealing with the lungs and so forth. And even standing water outside can contribute to mosquitoes, vector-borne illness, and so forth. So we wanted to see where the flooding was happening. We also had an emergency assistance fund in the beginning to help reimburse people for damages. So here, the dots show where there was flooding, and in many cases, flooding occurred where none had occurred in the past, to our knowledge. And in this side of the city is where we have more older housing and many times seniors, some of our disadvantaged communities, higher Hispanic population. We also have a lot of Asian and many foreign language speakers in Rockville and other communities. And so this was really in places that already had some challenges. But it was partly just because the rainfall was just so heavy in that area. So, but now, okay, so here I forgot I had this slide that shows, some of these socioeconomic challenges. There's, higher poverty, unemployed, elderly, youth, disabled, single-parent households in that sort of eastern side of the city where the flooding was. So we knew we needed to have a robust program to help mitigate those losses in the future, especially for these communities. So, well, you can't see the words on this slide, but you can see the pictures. So we launched a flood mitigation assistance program, which reimbursed people for the costs of doing some flood hardening around their homes. So you can see, there's caps to go on those basement windows or sump pumps, different drainage to move the water away from the home, French drains, things like that. So this is more of like the, hard infrastructure to prevent damage in the future, to help protect our community. And so over in 2023, we actually reimbursed $100,000 worth for 92 projects at 40 properties. So, as you know, an ounce of prevention is
You save money by acting now.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we say, oh, okay, great. Just wrapping up. And we have a new partnership with the Chesapeake Bay Trust to expand this program, along with our Rainscapes program, which is like a mini green infrastructure program for homes, where it also reimburses homes for planting trees, little rain gardens, environmental landscaping. And so that'll expand it to $300,000, and is now available for multifamily properties, nonprofits, and not just single family homes, because we realized that we were serving them, to the without serving, the full community. And so that will be launching this year. We're also developing a flood mitigation, a flood resilience master plan. So we're going to be studying, the hydrology of the city more carefully, and because our imaginations are not able to not able to envision where the flooding could occur, because we
Maybe
haven't
this
seen
is
it
where
yet.
that high-tech thing can come in for us later.
Yes, absolutely. So we're looking at 2 sub-watersheds first, and then we'll look at the whole city, and this will allow us to prioritize bigger flood mitigation structures, to help, in the communities that need them the most. And since we do have our own local regulations, we can incorporate that in our building designs and so forth. We're also working with the local housing authority, and working on a partnership with the Montgomery County Green Bank, which brings in private financing to help leverage investments in local climate projects. And we're focusing more on climate and on energy efficiency and solar, and now they're expanding into resilience. And we're going to be working with them on one development, Scarborough Square, on both energy efficiency and flood mitigation in that neighborhood too. Climate change poses the worst risk for those who are already experiencing economic and health challenges, is something widely recognized. And the city of Rockville is hoping to increase the climate programs availability for renters and multifamily residents, as well as the deeper community engagement as we're going along. So we still have a long way to go, but we think we have a pretty strong start, and we've tried to include health equity considerations in all of the actions in our climate action plan. And as a reminder, we are all connected, and here's part of our ecosystem of support.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Mei-Hua, this is now you. So Mei-Hua Zhu, she's at the Asian Center for Air Pollution Research, and she's been working with IGES to help the city of Niigata. So tell us your story. Don't move the mic. Don't move the mic.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and in the floor and online, all the participants. Thank you for having me today. And first of all, I would like to thank you, huge thanks to the Eric and Jennifer to host this meeting. And I'm from Niigata, so today I would like to talk about the initiative and the efforts that Niigata putting on the climate actions. So as you can see on this slide, Niigata is quite a middle-sized of city in Japan, and it's just close to the Japan Sea. That is not big, such as like Tokyo and Kyoto area, such kind of the city, but they are very like proud of their Japanese traditional culture. So yeah, I'm living in the Niigata more than almost 25 years. So I think yeah, I'm a like almost the right one to introduce the Niigata climate actions. So the first of all, I would like to see with you about climate like change status in the Niigata cities. You can see on the left there is the climate temperature increase. There is during the 100 years, there is almost a 1.5 Celsius degree already increase in the Niigata cities. That is especially distinguished in the like spring seasons. And at the middle of the picture, you can see the sea surface temperature. That is the highest in the Japan area. You can see that. Yeah, this is really a problem, I think. Because of the sea surface temperature increasing, there will be like influence the weathers and like the wind directions. So and the last one I would like to talk about the economic losses. The previous speakers introduced that there is some kind of very significant economic losses by the climate change. In Niigata City also, a lot of economic losses for the comes from the climate change. Especially Niigata is very famous for the rice production. Niigata has the top one the brand for the rice that is called the Koshihikari, and because of increasing of like extreme the heat, there will be the produce like $90 million for the farmers. Yeah, this is a very big like a deduction for the like family incomes. So for the conclude the action for the Niigata cities, they has 5 the important components. You can see there is they very like they would like to keep the rural environment in the Niigata cities, and they also like to establishment the smart energy cities, and they also try to come the transition to the decarbonization transportation and carbon neutrality and to change their lifestyle, and they also put a lot of efforts on the adoption, climate adoption. By doing so, they such kind of measures will contribute to biodiversity and the health promotion, and like strengthen the relationship with communities and job creation, and like environment protection. For the industrial sector, the Niigata City has put great efforts on the big like companies. They would like to reduce the 1% energy saving per year, and until 2030s. By the business sector, they put a lot of efforts on the building areas to introduce renewable energy, solar panel, such kind of thing, I think. In the residential sector as well, yeah, it's very similar, same with the business sectors. And for the public facilities, they would in Niigata City, they introduce a lot of solar power generation systems and e-vehicles and LED lightings, and as well as to build the more like net zero energy buildings for the Niigata City public like facilities. For the introducing of renewable energy, you can see the solar panel. They would like to introduce the by the 2050, they would like to double their renewable energy introduced. By substituting the fossil fuel, the energy to the renewable energy, you can see we can get a co-benefit to reduce the air pollution emissions as well as climate the issues. The last one I would like to introduce about the transportation sector, how they can do some adoption for the climate change issues. That the main part is the introduce a lot of e-vehicles. You can see now in the 2018 there is only less than 1,000 EVs, but by the 2030 they would like to introduce almost 100,000 EVs. Yeah, this is I think this is a big ambition for their the EV efforts, I think. And the last one is the nature-based the solutions. In Niigata City, they has been put a lot of effort on the greening, and they introduced a lot of the park. And in the park, they also has a lot of the walking and the jogging courses in the park, so that strengthen the family relations and the communities. And I would like to highlight the bottom. There is one sentence I think that is the important scientific findings. It is saying the residents in the area with the high green cover had about around 6% lower mortalities. This is saying by introducing the green area this is how important for the city area. So yeah. The last one I would like to introduce the climate resilience the actions by the Niigata City for the Niigata cities. The Niigata has 4 important measures to increase climate resilience. One is rice production. They are researching the new brand can stand with high temperature. This is for the economic sector, and another is for the lifestyle. I think to protect the flood from the people and heavy. Niigata has a lot of snow in the countryside. There would be the 4 meters of snow. So they would like to enhance the snow melting pipeline. And for the heat stroke, like a lot of our Japanese colleagues already introduced, they had some community oases to sharing the cooling place. That's all of my,
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're hitting up with the end, but what I would like to is just ask each of you to give maybe just a really short example of, because she just talked about nature-based solutions. And I'm wondering if just run down the line here of one example of a really cool nature-based solution that your city's doing or wants to do, and then maybe you give an example of something that they're doing with industry or the buildings, okay? All right.
Well, one of the actions in our climate action plan is actually to develop an open space, like a green space plan for our city park system. And part of that will include, looking at places that are, near the higher urban heat island and ways to increase the resilience of our forests and so forth. And we're actually using some technology to try to get some volunteers or weed warriors to identify the amount of invasive plants that are in our forest. We have so many, and to try to sort of rank the health of the forest so that we can kind of try to find those spots where the invasive plants are to keep the green space resilient, because that needs to be resilient as well.
Okay, so sure. Anything with one example of something you didn't talk about, something good, short.
Okay. Yeah. For the top of the building, they introduce a lot grass make it more green. This is the nature-based.
Yeah, I want the Japanese group to go to the MLK library here in DC to check that out.
In Baltimore, we have a green network plan that kind of describes what Rockville mentioned in terms of connecting green spaces in a meaningful way, and goals to do like a 35-mile trail loop around the city. That would be like a bike trail. But one specific example, the National Aquarium is in Baltimore City, and they recently launched and opened up a floating wetlands. And so they're using technology that they helped to develop. And that is bringing more diverse habitat to that particular marine environment, as well as helping to support goals to clean up the Chesapeake Bay.
Cool. Okay, last but not least, any nature-based solution in your city?
そうですね。
Yes, let me see.
私からは自然というよりは建物
Rather than nature-based, this is a building action. The renewable energy support is done in Hachinohe. This is not only for the residential, but the business, commercial buildings too.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I'd like to ask my AV folks to put on the video. Can I have the clicker? That we have a closing thank you video from the Wellcome Trust. I don't think I click it, so I think it's you guys. And as they're bringing that up, I want to thank everyone here who's come and come in online. I also want to thank the invisible but important interpreters who've been speaking into our ears this afternoon. Yay, we love our interpreters. Lisa and Matoko. And here comes the video. It's coming. It's very short.
Hello, my name is Rachel Huxley, and I'm the Head of Mitigation in the Climate and Health Research Programme at the Wellcome Trust, the organisation that is supporting this project. Wellcome is a global charitable foundation established in 1936. Through our work, we support science to resolve urgent health issues facing everyone. And on behalf of the Wellcome Trust, I wanted to extend my sincere appreciation for those attending this panel discussion on solutions to climate and health in Japanese and American cities. As someone with a background in urban climate action, I'm well aware of the power that cities have to act and lead in this space. And I'm sure that the exchanges today will both prompt thinking and inspire action, offering insights into the multiple ways that cities are addressing climate change while working towards enhancing city dwellers' well-being and quality of life. And I'm sure challenges as well as opportunities are part of this conversation. And for both, the collaboration today highlights how local authorities can support and learn from one another. Many thanks for sharing your diverse perspectives, helping to enrich discussions and generate ideas for potential future collaborations between cities and other partners that support the Wellcome Trusts and your visions of a cleaner, safer, healthier planet. It is fantastic that the discussions held here today will continue over the course of this project, with your ideas and recommendations informing our engagement with partners. And it's in this spirit that I encourage you all to take the knowledge generated during this panel discussion and share with your organisations and your networks. Once again, thank you all for your engagement. Let us continue to collaborate in ways that will ensure a more sustainable and resilient future for all. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to applaud her even though she's not here, but they help support this project. And I want to thank all of you city folks, and I get to steal them away, and they're going to have there'll be some matchmaking during lunch, right? Talking with the Japanese and American cities, and thank all of you for coming, and see you soon. Bye-bye.